We opened up 10 locations in 18 months as brand new entrepreneurs that did not know what they didn't know. Probably the most foolish thing we did, but we learned a lot in a very short period of time.
You have multiple franchisees, so kind of give us a little bit of what it is today.
That would help people like us. If they wanted to go out on their own, maybe they have the sales experience, the recruiting experience, but they really don't know anything about the whole back office component.
I remember just having a team of maybe 3 to 5 different type of skill sets to develop a product. Today, you need 12 to 15 different type of skill sets to develop a product.
The questions that somebody in our support team might answer 10 times a week, that could easily be answered by something better than a search function. You could be the best recruiter in the world, but unless somebody went out there and got you the orders, you're not gonna have anything to work on.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Humans of Staffing. Today we have Cary Daniel. He's the co-founder and CEO of Nextaff. And welcome, Cary, to the show. I know we have probably met in the halls of ASA and SIA for the last 25 years, but good to finally meet you and have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Well, thank you. Glad to be here.
And really, we're going to dive right into this. You're one of the first guests on the podcast that has come in that is actually a franchisor. And Nextaff is actually a franchisor, and you have multiple franchisees. So kind of give us a little bit of what it is today and your journey on getting into the franchise system and why franchise.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. So, probably like you guys, I started out in the mid 90s working for large national companies, publicly traded companies, worked my way up into management and decided to go out on my own in 98. And doing that, I thought, I've done all the sales, I've done the recruiting, I've run a branch, I've done it for multiple companies, I've opened multiple branches for companies, I'm doing all the work, why not do it myself? I launched out in 98, and then within one day, I realized that I don't know what I don't know. And questions about payroll financing and certificates of insurance and software and all the stuff that the corporate back office had provided over those years, we really honestly had no clue. And so we spent probably the first 2 years of our entrepreneurial journey just trying to figure out the back office piece of the staffing world, which we had never had to deal with. And so when we exited that company in 2003, we were young enough that we had a lot of miles left in us, and the company we had sold did well, but not enough to go off and retire at 32 years old. So staffing was really all myself and James, my co-founder, knew. And so we talked to the buyer and said, hey, would you mind if we franchise the concept as long as we don't do it in the territory that you just purchased? He agreed. And so we spent a year kind of putting everything that we had learned over the last 4 years from going out on our own, having staffing experience, to putting it into a franchise model that would help people like us. If they wanted to go out on their own, maybe they have the sales experience, the recruiting experience, but they really don't know anything about the whole back office component. And that's why we put Nextaff together originally in 2004.
So franchise came in. What was the biggest at that time? Which company was the inspiration where you said, gosh, these guys have done a great job, or these few brands have done a great job in this industry, and we would love to mimic this? Was there any inspiration of that sort?
It's going to sound weird, but you and I talked about this before the call, is we never even considered a franchise, never knew it was a possibility, never really researched it. And so when we decided to do it on our own, out of just sheer ignorance, we were thinking, man, this is a really good idea. I'm sure there's some others out there doing it, but it wasn't until we started formulating our own. And then the interesting thing about a franchise business is, even though you're doing it in staffing, you're doing it in a different world. Now you're a franchisor that does staffing. You're not a staffing company that franchises. You are a franchise business that happens to do staffing. So we had to learn the franchise model. And that's where we started uncovering, okay, who's doing it? The great part about franchising is all the documents are public. So everybody's FDD, the franchise disclosure document, 20 years ago, it was called the UFOC, but you could go out and you could find these were public documents, and you could see, okay, here's how they do their item 6, here's how they do their item 7. And so that's where we started to kind of get some information from those competitors. But I would say the initiation of it and the impetus of it was from our experience. We just wanted to provide something that we thought would benefit, you know, people like us. And then along the path of launching it, we started gathering more information. But really, it was kind of off our radar. Franchise competitors were off our radar at the time. So once again, ignorant, you don't know what you don't know until you get in it. But that's how we were.
So, Cary, just curious. So here you are, you exit in 2003, right? And did you guys already make up your mind in terms that you want to be a franchisor? Or the strategy was, hey, let us run a staffing agency with the goal of eventually becoming a franchisor? Or was it flipped? Let's design it in such a manner that we behave like a franchisor.
Yeah, when we started our own in 98, it was, we were going to go out, we're going to open up our own staffing office, and we're going to replicate that across the country, but it was going to be ours. We were going to own everything. We were going to partner with some individuals, and we thought, if we could find some quality people, some quality managers that we could, share equity in, we could do it that way. So that was the original intent. And again, I would never recommend anybody do this, but we opened up 10 locations in 18 months as brand new entrepreneurs that did not know what they didn't know. Probably the most foolish thing we did, but we learned a lot in a very short period of time. It wasn't until after we kind of saw the struggles that we ran into, one with, starting the industry with starting in that business with no real back office experience, but then two, expanding to different territories. All of a sudden, my name's on a lease in Kansas City. There's one in Lenexa, Kansas. There's one in Denver, Colorado. There's one in Denver Tech Center. And I'm signing leases everywhere. I'm not there. I'm personally guaranteed on everything. I'm paying for everything. We thought, wow, this is kind of an expensive way to do it as well. And so it wasn't until we exited, we thought, okay, what did we learn from that? Well, we learned that just because you've been in staffing for 2 to 5 to 10 years doesn't mean you know the entire 360 of staffing. And secondly, if you want to go out and you want to build something of size, you better have some good capital behind you, and you better be willing to put your name on a lot of personal guarantees if you're going to do it. Or maybe the franchise route is a way that you could expand and, offer an opportunity to other people to where you're not financially on the hook for every single office that's getting opened around the country. And so that's what appealed to us, was kind of a combination of that.
So today you've mentioned, Cary, you've got, was it 40, 41 franchisees?
21.
21, sorry.
Yeah.
So you have 21. How has the franchisor model evolved for you over the last 20 years? Meaning, are they, is it more compliance, more legal regulations, more, is it become better just because new tech has been introduced? How's that model evolved for you, specifically on the staffing protocol side?
Probably the biggest area, if I think about it, is 20 years ago when we started. So wind yourself back to 2004. Obviously we had computers, we had the internet, you had, Monster was kind of the prevailing thing. Career Builder was trying to make their name at the time. And so really, to run a franchisor or to run an independent staffing office, right? You need to be able to sell, you need to be able to recruit, and you need somebody to handle probably your ATS and maybe manage your job boards. And then obviously you've got your compliance mechanism to that. Fast forward to today, and yes, the legal complexities have multiplied, especially if, like, you guys are in California, we have offices in California. The level of compliance and the stuff that we constantly see and the PAGA claims and all that stuff is just crazy. So yes, compliance has jumped up, but I think the biggest evolution in staffing for the franchisor as well as the industry has just been the evolution of the tech stack. Starting out for us, if you're a franchisor, I think if I recall back 20 years, we had one required technology, and that was the ATS. That was it. Now you have your ATS, you have your messaging system, you have your referral system, you have, it just goes on and on and on and on. And we've become much more of a technology, where it was before. Well, if I went with a franchisor, what's my biggest value? Okay, you do your payroll financing for me. That's big. You do my back office, you do my payroll, you do my taxes. Okay, that all makes sense. And I don't want to do any of that. That makes sense. Well, now we're also your technology hub. And, we get a lot of inquiries where people will say, well, I've been in the industry for 10 years. I'm thinking about going out on my own, but I also want to look at a franchise. I'm just trying to weigh the decision. And we used to get flack from our legal compliance person that helps us draft the FDD because we would show every single vendor their name and their website on a sheet. And they were like, why would you do that? I said, this is not a disadvantage to us. If an independent person wants to compete with Nextaff right now, they're going to have to go out and negotiate agreements with every single one of these vendors. And I promise you, this vendor, they won't be able to afford them. Can't do it. As a single operator, you're not going to pay $50,000 a year for that. They won't be able to do that. This one, don't meet the minimum size. This one, yeah, if you want to pay $2,000 a month. This one, okay, maybe. You get this whole laundry list of technology providers that they most of the time they can't even get in the door because they're a startup. They're too small, or they're going to pay an extremely high price for. So I'd say the technology component has really become a critical piece for us. And it's not only the stuff they use in the back office to help them with their day-to-day stuff like we were used to, but now it's all the other stuff, the analytical stuff, the Microsoft BI, some of the AI components that we're starting to use, all that stuff. It's become much more complex.
We're absolutely right. We probably have 40 to 45 different integrations within our product because our goal was single sign-on. You get everything. I remember mobile apps came out in 2000. Actually, mobile phones were in 2007 when my phone came out and Android came out. And by 2010, 2011, we were already using, some sort of web-based mobile device for your interaction. Then mobile apps were there and so forth. I remember just having a team of maybe 3 to 5 different type of skill sets to develop a product. Today, you need 12 to 15 different type of skill sets to develop a product because now I've got mobile, now I've got backend, I've got AI, I've got data engineering, I've got security, I've got third-party APIs that I'm integrating with, plus creating all this compliance. It is so tough these days, as somebody who leads a product engineering team, because the number of skill sets and the type of individuals, putting them all together. And I can only imagine, on the front end side where you're at, and for us to provide that user experience in a very seamless flow, is yet making all this effort, yet it's challenging on someone like you who's your user base. And I think where your complexity comes even more is that you have a franchise model on top. So now, not only are you purchasing technology to run operations for a single staffing agency or independent, but now you're also saying, look, there's a hierarchy here. Maybe your federal tax IDs are different for each and every, I don't know, I'm just guessing. Let's say your federal tax IDs are different. Now, who's responsible for workers' comp? Who's responsible for funding? Who's responsible? So your core design and structures where, frankly, I feel the complexity is on a franchise model. And I can definitely appreciate that. That's definitely evolved on a tech front for sure. Because otherwise, I'm doing patchwork behind the scenes to make things work.
Yeah, we have a full-time person that is essentially their major role is making sure that everything is coordinated and the pieces and the components are all working together and fitting and, are up to date. And, that didn't exist 20 years ago.
Yeah, and are your franchisees responsible for payroll processing, or do you guys do it?
So they essentially do the time entry batch.
Got it.
And then once they're done, it kicks over to us. We'll process. We'll do the direct deposits, garnishments, taxes, all that good stuff.
Are they responsible for billing as well, or you guys are doing the billing?
They do the billing on site, so that way they can include timesheets if necessary.
So your franchisor has taken the responsibility of the back office, specifically payroll and, like I said, garnishments and tax filing and other aspects. Got it. Okay. Okay.
Collections all come in, remit through one single source. We'll post the payments for them and then remit them. They get to see that every day on their daily cash receipts report, what cash has come in, and then that comes to them every week.
So if I were to become or was interested in becoming a franchisee today, what are the basic criteria you guys have in terms of the criteria, whether that's a liquidity, requirement or something else?
Yeah. So that's something else that's changed over the last 20 years. So if you would ask me that question 2 years ago, it would have been what every other staffing franchisor is looking for, right? B2B sales, aggressive personality, leadership skills, and, probably liquidity somewhere between $125,000 and $165,000 to get one off the ground. For traditional commercial offices, that's pretty much the same for us and everybody else down the road. What we did last year was we launched a virtual model so that it basically reduced and eliminated most of the objections that either we were getting or most of the reasons why we disqualified somebody from becoming a franchise. And that occurred post COVID. I don't really remember getting that many inquiries for a home-based or a virtual model prior to 2020. But over the last handful of years, that kept coming in. And pretty soon, when you start DQing people over and over, you start thinking, wait a minute here, maybe we're thinking about this all wrong. And so last year, we rolled out for the healthcare vertical and for the technology vertical, a virtual model. And what that allows you to do is, one, it allows you to get your upfront costs instead of 125 to 165. Now you can get that upfront cost down to half. So now it's, 65 to 85. The other key component to that was most people that we talk, not most, a lot of people that we talked to did not want to hire full-time people right out of the gate. That's a requirement on a traditional brick and mortar for every franchise unit in staffing that I know of. The other thing they didn't want to do was sign a 3-year lease. They don't want to be in a long-term lease right out of the gate. They want to kind of ease into it. Is there a way to kind of get things moving before I have to commit to a 3-year lease? Everybody else requires that. The virtual eliminates it. But probably the biggest avenue that we opened up, specifically on the healthcare, and here, and I just mentioned to you guys before the call, here in 4 days, this will roll out in technology, is the ability to now bring on recruiting experienced individuals instead of just the sales side. Because beforehand, if somebody came to us and said, hey, I've been doing recruiting 20 years, that's awesome. Have you ever done sales? No. Have you ever hired a salesperson? No. Managed one? Anything? Nope. Ooh, every one of us, I'm sure, think the same thing. We're like, and this is going to be tough for you because you could be the best recruiter in the world, but unless somebody went out there and got you the orders, you're not going to have anything to work on. So we would advise that unless you have a very strong salesperson day one, this is probably not the right fit for you. When we went to the virtual model, we made a very targeted effort to go out there and secure VMS and MSP orders so that somebody that came to us now that said, hey, I've got 10 years, 5 years, 20 years experience in healthcare. That's all I know. I have 5,000 open orders you can work on tomorrow. And you don't have to sign a lease and you don't have to hire anybody full-time. And you can basically become a self-employed individual for $65,000 to $85,000 with the potential to make, you guys know, being in the field, I'll let them do their own math. We kind of get restricted on that by the FTC. So I can't make earnings claims, but you get an idea. If they've been in the industry a while, they can run that math and think, okay, wow, instead of me getting a base salary plus, 6% of GP, now I'm going to take 100% of the GP and pay a royalty fee. Yeah, I can make good money doing that. So it's opened up an entire new candidate database for us to go after. And in a handful of days, when this other acquisition closes, that'll now include technology too. So it could be a very interesting ride over the next 5 years.
That's innovation, right, Cary? That's adjusting to the market as you're going about. Uh, Within that, do they get territories where they're able to function or not function? How do you keep that together, right?
Segment these into traditional brick and mortar commercial business. Every franchisor out there has a defined territory. This is what you get. This is what you're buying. You can't go outside of it, but nobody can come inside of it either. The healthcare side, and specifically the technology side, kind of works in the reverse of that. We have declined more technology franchise applications over the years because they came to us and said, "Hey, I'm the number one producer at X, Y, and Z. I bill X millions of dollars a year. I want to buy a franchise." Great. What market are you in? Dallas, Texas. Great. We'll give you this. Oh, well, no, I can't be restricted just to Dallas. I have clients in Denver and Chicago and LA. Oh, well, that's not the way franchising works. You'd have the Dallas market. Well, but what if my client's based in Dallas, but they have 25 locations around the country? Well, another franchise would have rights to oh, I don't like that at all. Sorry. And just decline. Now in healthcare and in technology, it's borderless. You can go anywhere, sell anywhere, recruit anywhere. Now there's certain parameters around that, right? Based on where we operate currently. And, there's some parameters behind that, but essentially it opens it up to an entire US market that you can recruit and sell in that aspect. And so it opens the door enormously. It's kind of I'd say, I don't know, I'd call it taboo in the franchise industry, but to say you have a borderless franchise, I don't know anybody really out there that does that or claims that. So I can't imagine there's too many of them.
Who would so you get so just to kind of compete this with the new models that are coming in, right? We are very well used to marketplace models ourselves, right? Our technology sits on top of somebody who's got 20, 30 agencies, 5 agencies underneath. They all get together. Our stack runs this. That's what we specialize in the end. And compliance is a big thing. California compliance. TJ and I, between each other, 30 years in staffing each. So that's 60 years of just banging out how to best save our customers from PAGA and wage an hour, right? That's all we do. And we pretty much dominated in California. That's the start. But within that now, you've got the models of EORs are coming in strong. You've got the POs that are giving a lot around them, and even funding companies are into the mix to where, and the exact, I should say, the personality that comes in to find that franchise. It's typically either a great recruiter who has great relationship with their customer, and the customer continues to say, "Hey, I'm working my rear off and I'm not making enough money. Let me do that." Because sales side, typically they'll make a lot more than a typical recruiter would. And that's kind of how the equation's been. So in your case, has it mainly been the sales side where they're coming in to say, "I want to get a franchise"? Because now if you're going to virtual, you got to be a very strong recruiter. If you're a great recruiter, do they have to do much sales? Then it works perfectly, because if they're a great recruiter and the VMS and the MSP job orders are coming in, hopefully with enough margin, because margins are super tight, how is that? Which side is going heavier than the other?
Yeah. So prior to last year, it was 100% sales. I mean, if you were the best recruiter in the world, unless you said, "Oh, I'm also bringing in," it's, the way James and I started, right? I'm the sales side, James is the operation side. And that was a good mix. Unless they had that, we would normally decline them or tell them they needed to come back to us with a salesperson in mind that we vetted. Now with the virtual, it really has flipped on the other side. And I would say we're recruiting more recruiters for the virtual than we are salespeople, because now you've eliminated half of your equation. You don't have to go out and sell anymore. I have more orders than you could, I have more orders than 100 franchises could work on right now through the VMS and the MSP relationships that we have. And the great part about healthcare is in that world, they're not quite as compressed as the commercial side. So commercial, some of those are so razor thin. And, by the time you're done with the VMS and the MSP fee and our royalty fee, yeah, there's not a lot left. But on the healthcare side, there's some out there that still have and maintain really strong margins for an independent operator with no overhead. It's a fantastic model.
Definitely. And you're handling even the funding side. How's been the workers' comp challenge as far as California has been concerned for you?
So for us, about 4 years ago, we moved into the TISL program. So
Okay.
the staffing specific captive program.
Okay.
There's about 160, 180 staffing companies in that portfolio. And California is one of their, you know, big states. So they don't shy away from it. Where in the past, it was like, well, what percentage is coming from California? We have to be careful. Uh, we haven't we haven't really dealt with that or seen that so far. So we've been fortunate for us in making that move. That if we want to grow in California, there doesn't seem to be any roadblocks for that from the comp side.
So, according to you, we know commercial has been stressed. We know that for a fact. For us, we keep track of, for years and years now, right? We've kept track of hours as they're coming up and down. Um, we keep track of lunches late, each and everything across an entire ecosystem. And we saw the softness typically because when we see the job numbers, which seem to be 6 months behind always, and we're like, where are they getting these job numbers from? Because we saw the contraction happen a month or two in advance, right? We already saw it. And then it shows up in the job numbers like, oh, suddenly there was a higher unemployment. So we know commercials there, but healthcare had its heyday, we thought, in COVID times. Um, are you seeing it regenerating again? What's going on in healthcare?
Yeah. So we rode that healthcare wave like anybody else that was in healthcare during that time, because at the moment, you know, all of those folks were getting money from the government and they didn't care what the bill rates were. They didn't care what the pay rates were. And it was just going crazy. Obviously, that came down to a normalization, but those, like, I think I went to the healthcare that maybe it was the SIA Healthcare Summit, and a panel talked about that. There's a little whiplash from that, from people feeling like they were price gouged and that, rates and pay rates and everything else got way out of control. And so there was a little bit of a whiplash where I think it dipped below what a normal correction would happen. And then we all thought, this was a couple of years ago, we all thought, 6 months from now, everybody will forget about it and we'll be back to normal. That seemed to be prolonged a lot longer than we thought it would be. But I do feel now it's kind of back into that momentum that everybody has come to realize that, look, there's no way around it. There's a shortage, and you guys do this 24/7, 365. We're running a hospital and we've got all these open orders. We got to fill them somehow. So let's kind of reunite. Let's figure this out. And so I'd say it's definitely coming back, and it's evident by the orders that we have. You are seeing more and more consolidation. It seems like to at least the enterprise level spenders being at that VMS MSP level, where now if you want to get in and work on somebody like that, you're going to be going through one of those providers, one of the VMS or one of the MSPs. So we're seeing that a lot more. So in our offices, while that's an easy thing for them to start out with, hey, you could sign a franchise agreement. And if you came on and said, hey, I've been using Aviante or whoever for X number of years, you could start working on orders tomorrow. Now, we still want you to try and pursue some local relationships where the margins are going to be better. You're going to have a direct relationship. So we want to tell them that we don't want you to rely on those relationships 100% if you can do it. But I have a feeling we'll get some people that it's too easy, meaning they don't have to go out and sell. They just go down and figure out what orders they want to work on. Okay, if I'm a rad tech specialist, let me go through and look at every rad tech order I can find. I can recruit all across the country. Yep, that's what I'm going to do every day. So I have a feeling we'll see quite a few people that really don't have any desire to go out and sell. They're fine with those margins, and if they can put 15 nurses out on contract, they're like, I'm making more than I was at my other place, and I'm working from home. I'll do that.
Which one of your verticals, you said commercial, healthcare, technology, is what's that mixture of the percentage, I guess, of franchisees tend to specialize on which vertical? Does it attract, technology folks more to a franchise model? That's what I was trying to understand.
Yeah, for us right now, I'd say we're at about 80-20 commercial to healthcare. Technology is going to roll new to us. And like I mentioned before, a lot of the people that approached us from the technology side were from the recruiting side. And those were, sorry, that's not for us. After this acquisition here in 4 days or whenever it is, 5 days, we'll have access to VMS and MSP orders on the technology side. So you're going to start seeing now we have a match for those folks. And my guess is we'll start adding more of those to our portfolio very quickly.
No, that's awesome. Your basically your client base opens up here. Your tap.
Exactly.
So, Cary, how do you compete then with, again, this comes to mind because you've got so many offshore recruiting teams, right? You've got so many groups. For example, we've got AI recruiting tool, right? Calls you, does all the preliminary work, brings you back a profile. Now you as a recruiter, somebody who's experienced, looks at it and goes, okay, 1,000 people applied. I've got the 60 who over the weekend filled it out. Now I can work on these 60 because there's no way in the world I can look at 1,000 resumes. In that, you also mix in now overseas all the talent that sits there, and even they're using AI on top of that. Like it's doubling to the double we're seeing, right? So first you had them cheap because you could get a RPO, whatever you call it, a firm, and they'll give you 5 recruiters, X amount of dollars, and you could just hammer it away. You give them the tools. Now they've got AI on top of that, and you've got AI, and now you double up. How is that going to be? Is it going to be the race to whoever's got the AI and the teams behind them that could fill these orders? I mean, the landscape's getting even pretty quickly.
So the group that will be acquired here in a matter of days, by the time this airs, I'm sure this will be a completed deal. One of our team members is overseas right now meeting with their team of 90 that are doing exactly like you said. And that's what fascinates us about that model is the volume that they're generating, the minimal presence they have in the US. If we can combine those two, where now the downside to that business was, well, you don't have really a US, but you got, there's not a lot of US presence here. Yes, you're churning a lot of volume, you're creating a lot of activity. Now, if you can mirror that with, we have a footprint that covers the United States. Oh, and by the way, we've got a group that, when we're sleeping is doing the top of the funnel type work. Mix that with AI helping do some of the recruiting, screening, and in healthcare, some of the credentialing that seems to just take forever sometimes. Yes, you will compress some time frames and you're going to get a lot of volume processed in a short period of time with a US based in person that can, pick up the phone and call or, talk to somebody and have that direct relationship too. So in our minds, it'll be the best of both worlds.
So you are adjusting to that model. I'm glad you said that because you've thought it through because that's going to be the key of the future right now is within AI. Besides that, where else is AI now being sprinkled into your entire ecosystem? So Recruiter was already there, right? The recruitment component of voice and texting and everything. We've been doing it's been 2 years or more. It's battle tested. It's pretty good. matching is tricky. Matching is something everybody's kind of a little, I should say, not exposing themselves to. So that's a little careful. But where are you seeing on your side that AI is going to start moving the needle, or you're taking a cautious, optimistic, caution and optimism at the same time approach?
Yeah, I'd say we're probably in the camp where we're running full steam ahead, but not out of control when it comes to AI. I mean, we don't want to just jump into something and then realize that, oh, we used the wrong platform or we went off the rails somewhere. But I'd say we are trying to be as forefront as possible on the use of AI, the applications of it. And for us, that goes in both sides of the equation, not only on the we call it the client side or the client facing side, which is recruiting and sales, which is what the offices do. But then you have us, the franchisor, that does franchise development, and you have support mechanisms. So right now, I'll give you an example. 6 months ago, if an office said, where's that certificate of insurance, or where's that form I needed to fill out? Well, that would be an email to support, or it'd be a phone call to support. Now we have that embedded into our Teams system, and we call it Ask Abe. And you can, hey, where's the latest COI, or where's the latest this? And it'll show you the resource. If that resource is not accurate, you can do a thumbs down. That'll get kicked to support. Support will figure out where it's being directed. So the support tickets now, we're starting to see it go from 100% manual to now it's starting to have, some kind of AI component where it's starting to do that lifting of the questions that somebody in our support team might answer 10 times a week that could easily be answered by something better than a search function. It's a little more than that. And then on the Fran Dev side, we've kind of gone to the next level where we actually have an AI agent that does the initial outbound call and can do the inbound calls. So if you call that number right now, you get a phone call or you get a call answered by, hey, welcome to Nextaff. This is Steven. I'm your AI assistant. What can I help you with today? And you can ask it anything related to our franchise. Do you have a territory? What's your franchise fee? Is my mark? You can ask it any question in there. And we've been training this thing on answering these questions much more conversational than the old days of, for franchise development, for this press one, for that press two. This is an actual conversation, and you can tell him to start over. You can tell him to repeat it. You can tell him that makes sense. We've incorporated AI into sales training. So we also have an AI agent that acts as a prospect. We've given him the top objections that a prospect gives. And when you call in, it's like, hi, this is Michael. I'm your AI sales trainer. Before we begin, on a scale of 1 to 10, how difficult do you want this call to be? And if you say 1, fine, he's going to go easy on you. If you say 10, he's going to hit you with every objection he could think of. And it's that's the kind of stuff that for us, for the nominal cost of doing that stuff, it's fascinating. And somebody could be sitting there, in their lounge chair at 10 o'clock at night, sitting there doing sales call training with our AI agent for pennies a minute.
It's reassuring to hear from you what we also, have designed our solutions around different areas of where to use AI. So let me give you an example. When AI first came out, well, when I said first came out, really got introduced to enterprise level systems with proprietary data like you saw there. AI works best in today's market is where you've got either customer service, customer support, outbound scheduling, initial call validation. It works really well where it's repetitive, the same task again 20 times. And yes, there's some sort of an intelligence involved in it to ask those questions. And for the training models you just mentioned, it works really, really well. And that whole area of customer service, customer support, outbound scheduling, onboarding, AI recruiting, AI has done, at least top of the funnel, has done really well. Where it's now getting its claws into is the middle office, if you want to call it, or the back office. Because what happens is what you just spoken about, there's really no confidential data beyond a point there. There's really no social security numbers, no bank account information, nothing going out to the banks, nothing going out for tax purposes. If you mention, oh, I've got an AI agent that files my taxes for me, on the tax filing side, I'll be like, oh, really? Have we thought about the guardrails? Have we talked about data security? Because that is where the entire industry is moving towards. But those guardrails and data security have not been sorted out. Will it be there? Absolutely, right? But when? So I'm glad to hear that, that you're using this AI. I call it pretty much on the outskirts of business, right? Like the outside. And as you get deeper and deeper into middle office, timekeeping, background, so the minute you say, I know where you live, I know your social security number, I know your federal tax ID number, I know your bank account number. Now I've exposed everything. And especially if you're dealing with third parties like the federal, state governments, and you're filing. So I think that on an AI front, that will take time personally, because that it's got to be 100% accurate. So AI cannot work at even a 90% accuracy, because what you're saying is I'm willing to accept 10% of failure in filing my taxes, right? I don't think that will work. So to get from that 75, 80% to 100% is where our number one challenge is, that we're also working towards the fine tuning on the middle office and back office side. But the other side, other areas you spoke about, I'm so glad to hear in the real world that there is ROI, there is, that comfort, frankly. And at the end of the day, the trust, it seems like, the trust factor is there that, okay, I'm going to let an AI agent do this function for me, right? And I'm not too concerned or worried that it's going to do something funky and then, jeopardize our reputation, jeopardize our opportunities. So,
Yeah, and you're kind of limited. You're limited to the penalty for failure right now is, you know, somebody calls for a franchise information. Steven goes off the rails and starts asking him, what the, it's okay, fine. That gave a bad taste, but yeah, it's not detrimental where, hey, thank you. Now that I have your social security number and your date of birth and wait. So
so what we're also seeing on the AI front, Cary, is, the future, right? If at least on the lenses that we wear, the impact of AI agents on your organization. We are rapidly growing to a point where AI agents will start being assistants to an extent. I mean, they're limited today, but your org chart will have AI agents in each department. Might not be each role, because what AI agents are doing, they're merging roles. So the same individual who used to do one specific role is able to do now 5 different roles, just the way the AI agent architectures are designed this way. So, we envision that in the next 3 to 5 years, you will have organizations, and they'll be forced to, frankly, is have different departments, and within those departments have these AI agents that specialize, and their domain expertise is in within that department with those specific 3 to 5 roles. And so now the guardrails are around that agent. And now the value proposition there is that agent is now able to securely, and with data governance and all the compliance that's going to come with it, scale at the level that you're scaling. And then each department will have that. And these agents are talking conceptually. We heard about this, a while back, but execution on the ground, I think that is, at least in our opinion, that will happen. It's only a question of when that happens.
well, I literally was on a demo probably an hour before talking to you guys in that exact capacity when it comes to one of the marketing functions. And I sat on a demo while he typed in our URL and told that program to learn who we were, figure out everything about us. And within 15 minutes had written our blog content and our social media posts using our USP, targeting our ideal client profile. The pictures were in Nextaff orange with a blue lanyard, had our colored palette on. I was like, this is all in 15 minutes of the thing starting. And it will do this at the pace that you want and will post to your blog with the meta tags, the SEO, all this stuff that's supposed to happen, and also post on the social media, all the platforms that you want, and we'll do it just like that. And it's using multiple AIs. It's not just one. It's using multiple AIs to do this. Because if you guys do it like I do, I mean, I don't use, Chat GPT if I want to do a logo, or if I want to do an infographic or something. I go to Claude to do that. Grok is for so they all kind of have their great little specialties, and evidently this one right now is doing that through this a matter of minutes produced. And we're reading this, and I'm like, this is. I mean, it's talking about our X factor. It's talking about all this stuff. I mean, it's all this. I'm like,
It's amazing. We can actually have a separate podcast just for that. It's actually what it is. It's personalization at scale. That's the key.
yeah. But to your point, you also have a guardrail around it. To your point, they still have a. I don't know where my notes went, but I can't remember what they call it, but they have a person, and that could be us or them, that still, hey, before this goes, we still want some parameters. So it's, to your point, it's like, we're 90%, but are you okay with letting this go? Or do you want that little parameter? We're like, no, for now, at least we want that parameter to read it and justify it. But yeah, the bulk of the work, that top of that heavy lifting work is done and is handed to you. And it might be 99% done
Correct.
in 15 minutes instead of, a week.
Yeah. Hence my point, right? You would need somebody in your marketing/sales department who specializes in some sort of AI tool, like we mentioned. It could be Claude, could be ChatGPT, could be Grok, whatever. Specializes in AI tool whose sole job is just to do this, know the parameters, and that individual, and that individual, I think, is going to be someone uh, who is a little bit more technically savvy, maybe not a software developer, but technically savvy, more of a systems analyst. Number one. Number two, who understands your business. I think that's going to be the key. And number three, someone who's willing to take risks, because the next 2 to 5 years with this AI agent, you shouldn't be worried about losing your job just because you're trying new things out, right? And so very interesting, at least on our front, and in very interesting where the world is heading. So
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting, 3 to 4 years. I mean, 4 years from now, it's going to be crazy. I don't even think we could imagine. I'm thinking staffing specifically. Uh, some of the changes that could occur.
we might be talking to your avatar, Cary, in like a year or so. Might not even have to physically be here.
That that's you could be very right. And it's somebody's like, hey, you know what? I've said it on every one of your team's meetings for the last 4 years. I know your personality. I know what you're going to say. I know everything about you. We'll go ahead. We'll go ahead and take this meeting for you.
And we are too old to change by this time to begin with. So they're going to get all the quirks.
Do it better with less errors and wouldn't have to take a big walk every 5 minutes.
Exactly, Cary. So, Cary, just one of we're approaching around 50 minutes. What we wanted to do was also, I want to get to know, how is your franchise, the buy and sell model occur, right? Today, someone's been with you 5 years, wants to exit. Someone else wants to double up their franchises. How does that? Do you have a mechanism today that gets them equity? Is the formula is already in place? So it's they kind of know what the outcome would be if they did certain things.
It's no different than any individual entrepreneur that goes out and opens up Daniel Staffing, right? If they want to exit, you're going to run through that same process like anybody else would. We're going to now. The difference in a franchise model is we'll help you do this, but we're going to look at your income statement. We're going to add back kind of that owner discretionary stuff that all of us as entrepreneurs do. And you're going to come up with your final seller discretionary income, and you assign a multiple to that. And there's your valuation. Now, whether that's somebody within the franchise organization that says, ooh, I want to buy that one, which has happened multiple times, or somebody from outside the world comes in and says, I want to be the buyer of that, which has happened multiple times. Either way is fine with us. I would say as we grow and as we become larger, the franchisor does have a right to exercise to acquire. There could be some instances, I say, in the future where if you come to us and you say, hey, I've got an offer for this person outside the industry who wants to buy my company for $2 million. If the franchisor says, you know what, we'll match that. You know, there's nothing to say the franchisor doesn't buy it and convert it to a corporate office or a franchise office that we hire somebody to run. So, but yeah, there's multiple ways that they can exit, but it follows pretty much the same path.
And do you in any way help them with the financing, or typically someone's buying it, they're going to an SBA or doing something else to buy an existing franchise? Outside funding.
Yeah, we have relationships with lenders that we can direct them to. And whether that's, an SBA or if they're going to use a ROBS program or, something like that, we have lenders that we can direct them to. We don't do that financing in-house, but we have relationships.
In that case, as the growth occurs, you're seeing, so just to recap, that you're seeing the most growth is going to come out of your virtual franchises. That seems to be, the kind of individual, somebody very strong on the recruiting front would be the perfect person for it, especially if they come from IT as well as healthcare would be the two preferred individuals. And what should their liquid net worth be at this point if someone was listening to this?
So on the virtual side, in the FDD, we have to list kind of a minimum maximum. And right now we're getting ready to update our 2026. And so it's not final, but from the draft we have, I believe it ranges from 65 to 85 on the virtual model. And that includes, your startup, your franchise fee, your launch kit, if you have to buy a computer, all that stuff.
And they're pretty much up and running from day one in regards to the job orders that are already there for them to start filling and start making as they go about. And obviously you have your, is it in the franchise again, just to make sure that, so you have your own franchise fee, was it 2, 3, 5%? I'm sure it's there in the brochure. You guys are charging your piece. Are you, let's say the workers' comp fee, Fura Sura, all that adds up here. And then you probably has an admin management fee. And then there's a royalty fee as well. How does that typically work? What is my base cost? What is the additional I'm paying? Because obviously most people will sit and compare it. Hey, can I do it as an EOR? Can I just go get a people lease, type of leasing company? What do I do?
Yep. So you're very close. So our model is constructed a little different than most of our competitors because we charge a royalty fee off of gross wages.
Gross wages. Versus total sales. Everybody else goes for your billing amount. You're going for gross wages without adding workers' comp, Fura Sura, or anything. It's just if somebody got paid $10 an hour, you're basing it on that.
So it's yes, if they're getting paid $10 an hour, our royalty fee is 9% of that gross wage. The other competitors, if the bill rate's $20 an hour, they're going to base theirs off the $20 an hour, or some of them base it on the gross margin split. So most of the time, we do side-by-side comparisons quite often. And I would say most of the time when we run a side-by-side comparison, we are, 10 to 40% more cost efficient doing it that way. And the reason why we do it that way is, this comes from the old sales background, is if I'm a franchisee and I'm out there in a negotiating situation and I tell you your bill rate's $20 an hour and Sammy comes back and says, well, our current provider is doing it for $19. How more aggressive? Well, for me to figure out what my cost is, if it's based on revenue, I'm creating this circular reference. So, okay, if I lower it to here, then my royalty fee is going to go down. Or if it's based on gross margin split, it's even hard to calculate. If you do it off gross wages, I can walk into that meeting knowing that, okay, My pay rate's 15. I got my FICA FUTA SUTA and then my royalty fee. Okay, I know my cost is, $17.25. So now I'm going to go in at this, but now I know without ever having to do any math in my head, I know exactly what my gross margin is and whether I can adjust on the fly or not.
No, that's a great point. And also with you guys venturing into other verticals where your gross wages are going to be significantly higher than commercial, your royalty fee should go up.
Yeah. Well, and our theory also was for technology, great example. If our, let's say you've got somebody out on a $80 an hour pay rate and $160 an hour bill rate. Okay, if I'm basing my royalty fee off the revenue number, I'm not doing any more work because you got a fantastic margin. I'm still doing the payroll, the taxes, the garnishments, the back office, the training, I'm still doing the same amount of work. Just because you were able to negotiate a higher margin, we always thought that should be yours and your benefit. Conversely, if you got somebody at an $80 an hour bill rate and you can only negotiate a $110 bill rate, well, that's not on us either. We're still doing the same amount of work. We're just allowing you to benefit from the upside, but we won't get penalized on the downside. You benefit on the upside.
Unfortunately, Cary, this is all the time we've got today to cover this, but we'd love for you to come back and kind of divulge into this a little bit deeper, and really wishing you the best with the other acquisitions. Hopefully by the time this comes out,
Yes.
all that is out and you've got a LinkedIn post going out and celebrating, but we wish you the best. And our job is just to make sure everybody sees, because the opportunity you're providing, there's enough individuals who fit perfectly into that mold that makes it, they can focus on one thing, which is recruiting and placing and sales, and not worry about the rest of it. Hence why it's a great way to become an entrepreneur we know how tough staffing is at the back office side.
Well, and you mentioned, just a quick note, you did mention the EOR concept, and, there's a lot of people where that's a great avenue for them. But if you want an EOR, ours is kind of like the EOR plus or the PEO plus, right? If you want, in addition to everything that we talked about, but you also want the training, the coaching, mentoring, the peer network, the marketing material, the brand name, there's so much more that goes on in it. And when you compare the costs on a lot of EORs, it's not much different. Now, kind of sheepishly, I'll say it, but, EORs are just not always about the percentage they're charging. There's ways to work in SUTA and work comp and everything else. But when you compare it, if you got the best name in town and you know how to market and you know how to sell and you don't need anybody, I'm a slow solo guy, EOR, knock yourself out. That's your route. But if you want the extra that goes along with it, then it's hard to beat the franchise model where you could just go out, sell and recruit. And in the case of virtual, just recruit and everything else is handled for you. Yep.
Makes a huge difference. Again, Cary, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And all the best.